feel like a free slave. You know, I feel like I've been targeted by certain people. Just being out in the streets, somebody know they can take your freedom at any time. You got cops, you see they charging me F1 felonies. They see me riding a bike. It kind of says it all. You get F1 felonies when you shoot somebody, when you stab somebody. I was charged with that for riding a bike. You know, my freedom on the line. Unfortunately, I made mistakes when I was younger. And, you know, it's troubling me for the rest of my life. So if I'm gonna be the example and gotta stand up, gotta stand up.
The Court of Public Opinion is now in session. The Honorable J. Bears presiding.
Alright, thank you, bailiff. Everyone please take your seats. Sit the fuck down! Alright, are we ready to start this here? Ready for our first witness? Alright, first witness. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yeah, of course, Judge. What do I got to lose? You know, I ain't no snitch, but I like to tell the truth. Unlike this cop, Reginald Graham here from Philly.
Back of the paddy wagon. Dreams and Nightmares. It's Meek Mill's debut album.
See, my dreams unfold, nightmares come true.
It also describes Mill's life.
Started off with a rough life. I'm at a point where I could provide for my family, and I'm gonna continue to do so.
But Mill, who is currently in jail for probation violations, has battled legal trouble since he was 18. It was 2008 when Mill was found guilty by Judge Brinkley of illegally carrying a gun, as well as drug charges related to that same arrest. Mill spent 8 months in prison and got 5 years probation. When Mills was released, he returned to music, dropping the platinum-selling Dreams and Nightmares in 2012. His career was taking off. But in 2014, Mill violated his probation when he traveled out of state for a performance. Judge Brinkley sent him back to prison for nearly 5 months. She also reinstated his probation conditions. Then in March 2017, Mill was arrested for a scuffle at the St. Louis airport, and then again in August, this time in New York for popping wheelies on a dirt bike. The video posted to social media. Judge Brinkley cited a failed drug test and travel violations when she sent Mill back to jail for 2 to 4 years. The move went against the recommendations of the district attorney's office and Mill's probation officer, and was called excessive by Mill's supporters.
My. We got so much messed up stuff going on here. It's going to take us a minute to get through all of this, but some of the things that I'm going to touch on here is the idea that you have the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine going on here, which ultimately should lead to this case being thrown out of court. You have the idea that change of venue should have been granted, and ultimately, if that would have happened, then this judge would have been recused from the case, and she wouldn't be able to still be the person presiding over Meek's case. The judge and the police should have been put on administrative leave, like she shouldn't be sitting on the bench presiding over his case, much less anybody else's cases, while she's being investigated by the FBI. And this cop obviously should have been fired because it's not even just his case, but it's 80 other cases which have come to light that he made unlawful arrest, or he lied under oath, or did something to taint the investigation. Now, you know, like I said, this judge shouldn't be presiding over Meek's case or anybody else's cases while this investigation is going on, but yet she still is. And, you know, you got these 80 other cases that are going to a different judge to be reheard on this coming Friday. But in Meek's case, she says, well, we'll put a hearing out 60 days, even though the prosecutor and defense have an agreement that this case should be dismissed. Now, the district attorney hardly ever is going to dismiss a case that they brought to prosecution to begin with. But in this case, given the fact that the new evidence has come to light, that this cop was dirty and that he lied on the stand committing perjury, That's exactly what the district attorney is saying. So you have the defense and the district attorney who have agreement, which is somewhat like a plea agreement, but even worse in this case. In a plea agreement, basically somebody's admitting or at least pleading no contest to a charge to get some lesser sentence, whether they're guilty or not in a lot of cases, just to move the case along, do their time and get everything over with. So if the DA's office comes with a decent plea, oftentimes lawyers will urge their clients to plea it out, and most clients probably will do that. But in this case, it's not even like that. In this case, you have the district attorney who's agreeing with the defense attorneys that this case should be dismissed altogether. And something else that's crazy with this case, too, that you hardly ever see, is the fact that you have the governor of the state of Pennsylvania and senators in the state of Pennsylvania who also agree that this case should be thrown out at this point. Now, it's clear this judge has a vendetta against Meek because she has done a lot of inappropriate things prior to this. She wouldn't even have the hearing so he could get out of jail on bail until the 60 days is up in June when she's going to rehear the case. She shouldn't have been hearing the case at all at this point, and then she singles him out of 80 other cases to be the only one who is still stuck with his fate in her hands. So it's really quite ridiculous. Now, the cop Graham, like I said, 80 other cases that another judge is hearing because he has made evidence up, he's lied on the stand, and Meek's case is the only one that's being put out till June because the others are going to be heard this Friday. So basically, he's sitting in jail for what looks like no real reason because she didn't even want to at least have a bail hearing so he could be out on bail while they decide if this case should be thrown out or not. Now, to me, that's an obvious vendetta, and it's also a misuse of power, and I'm not quite sure how she's continuing to get away with this, especially considering the fact that there was an FBI investigation, or still is an FBI investigation going on to her. Now, Meek's lawyers have appealed this case to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, in the appeals courts in Pennsylvania, but we all know how long a case being heard before the Supreme Court can take in the United States Supreme Court, much less a state Supreme Court, which to some degree is even more packed than the U.S. Supreme Court, because the U.S. Supreme Court is very picky and judicial, if you will, at the cases that they actually decide to take on and hear. All right, thank you, witness. You may step down now. Are we ready for our next witness? The court now calls to the stand to represent himself in this case, Meek Mill.
Joining me now on the phone from the State Correctional Institution in Chester, Pennsylvania is rapper Meek Mill. Meek, thank you so much. How you doing?
Alrighty, Don, what's up? How are you?
Hey, I'm okay.
Not too bad to be in jail.
Yeah, listen, so I visited you in jail on Friday last week to talk to you about the case. Today, the district attorney told the Philadelphia court that he supports a new trial for you because of serious issues regarding the credibility of your arresting officer. He also said that he supported bail for you, but you're still being denied bail, and you're now appealing to the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. What are you feeling tonight?
I try to keep my spirits high. I don't really try to put too much things to get my hopes up from that courtroom right there, but I feel like I will be free one day because, the DA making that statement basically saying they know something is wrong here, and I don't think they just saying it just to say it. They're saying it for a reason, and I think I'll be able to get my chance pretty soon. My time coming.
So do you think she should have decided today, because she put it off for 60 days, whether or not she said she would consider the whole thing in 60 days? We're talking about Judge Judge Brinkley here.
Yeah, I thought that was a little crazy. I try not to do too much negative speaking on her because my life in her hands, but I think people could see that was a little crazy if the DA offering it that I get bail, offering that I get a new trial. I think 60 days is a little outrageous. 80 cases go in front of a judge on Friday, and mine will be the only one that's heard in June.
Do you think that since they have the new information and the new evidence, you think that she's going to rule in your favor?
I don't know. I don't think she's gonna do anything in my favor. Personally, I never had anything done in my favor in that courtroom, and I just brought my hopes all the way down when it came to that courtroom. Period. I was found guilty of pointing the gun at 2 cops at one time. I thought she would have ruled in my favor when she seen my face on that mugshot. My face was beat in, but
Well, you're serving time for probation violations. You had a few of those going back to 2012. And while you told me, you said you're not perfect, you don't think this punishment fits the crime, right?
Hell no, I'm not perfect. I didn't commit the crime. I didn't point a gun at 2 officers. I think if you did a poll on CNN, it had to the black male point a gun at 2 officers in the middle of a full-blown raid. I think the profile would be like 98% saying no. I think everybody knew that. And with all these young men getting killed for reaching for their cell phones, I happened to make it from the ghetto and be on the road to success. That was lucky enough. You think I'm lucky enough to point a gun at 2, 3 officers at one time without being a shot being fired at me? That's like almost impossible.
Let's talk about what you have become the symbol for, of really a cause celeb, because many celebrities and activists say that your situation highlights the problems with the criminal justice system and why it needs to be reformed in this country. Do you believe your case is representative of the bigger problem here?
Yeah, definitely. It's like even if I wasn't innocent of this case, just being on probation, 11 years so far, if I was them kids in Starbucks, you see they talking about the Starbucks, the black kids got locked up. If I would have got locked up in Starbucks just for sitting in Starbucks by mistake and got a technical violation, legally, a judge would be able to sentence me to 2 to 4 years, 3 to 6 years, 5 to 10 years, just for having police contact. And I don't think nobody should lose their freedom for not even committing crimes. I was locked up. I was found guilty of a crime I didn't commit in 2008 or 9. I'm in a state penitentiary right now, still because of that case. And I've never been in trouble since 2009. And I'm doing a state sentence to that right now. And you know, a lot of people, they get locked up for technical violations and stuff like that, and they lose their jobs, and they lose their family. Their kids go fatherless for months, years at a time over small mistakes, not committing crimes. And I don't think, yeah.
Do you understand how big this cause has become? You know, for just around the country and around the world. Do you understand that, being there in the penitentiary?
Yes, I totally understand that. I can't get the full effect of it because I'm in prison. We only see the daylight when we walk outside. We only get information when we talk on the phone or if we look at the news. So I'm like in the middle of a war zone where you can't really get the full effect. But
so what do you want people to know, Meek, especially young black men who may come into contact with the system? What do you want people to know about you and about how they should conduct themselves and what they should do? Anything you want to know?
I want people to be careful. I want people to be careful, especially young minorities. I call it target practice. When you are already a target and you're in high-risk neighborhoods where people go to jail a lot, be careful. Watch the way you move because you will get caught up in a situation like this where you could be 18 years old and you could suffer from it when you're 30 years old. Luckily, I'm strong enough to overcome everything. I've been to jail 3-4 times over the same probation that I've been on for 11 years. Yeah. I was strong enough to lose endorsements, get them back, strong enough to lose fans and get them back and keep people believing in me and stay on top of my game. So I would say be careful and stay out the way. And the most important thing I want to say is vote. When it's time to vote for governor, when it's time to vote for judges, DAs, vote. Let's vote for people that's into justice reform and helping the urban community because, you know, we're being affected by it, but we're not voting and we're not holding any political presence.
Meek Mill. Meek, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, okay?
So, what is the fruit of the poisonous tree and how does it fit in this case? Well, the fruit of the poisonous tree is a legal metaphor in the United States used to describe evidence that is obtained illegally. Now, the logic of the terminology is that if the source, the tree, of evidence itself is tainted, then anything gained from the fruit is also tainted as well. In Meek's case, the arresting officer, this Reginald Graham, is tainted, and so the investigation itself has to be tainted because he's been charged with manufacturing false evidence and committing perjury, which means lying on the witness stand under oath. Because of this, it stands to reason that the source of the tree in this case, Reginald Graham, as I said, the arresting officer himself, has proven to be tainted, which is why Meek's case and 80 other cases he was involved in are now under review. So if Officer Graham the tree is tainted, then the fruit of the tree, which is his arrest of Meek, is also tainted and a mistrial should be declared, which is basically what the lawyer for Meek is saying, and it's also what the district attorney is agreeing should be the case. The only person not agreeing with it is Judge Brinkley, and quite frankly, nobody can understand why. Now, this case being thrown out is likely what will happen to, or at least the 80 other cases will be thrown out as likely what will happen. And that'll probably happen in the next 3 days when their cases are heard by a different judge. Now, in Meek's case, Judge Brinkley decided not to hear bail for Meek and to not allow him to join the rehearing of his case with the 80 others in 3 days, but to set a date out 60 days to hear it herself. Meanwhile, Meek sits in jail for another 60 days, and she is quite frankly being vindictive towards him, as I had said earlier. So, what's the other part of this? The other part of it is the change of venue question. Now, a change of venue motion has two parts to it. The first is jurisdiction, which means the court has the legal right to, or authority to decide legal issues which affect the rights of the parties in the case. And then the second part is venue, the venue itself, which decides if the court is in the best location to hear the case. Now, there are very strict rules that govern where a case can be heard. So, given the treatment of Meek by this particular judge, and given the way his case has went in this Philly courtroom, Meek's defenses should have, and they have tried to, be able to request that the case be moved to, I don't know, somewhere like Pittsburgh, because that's outside of Philadelphia, but it's still in the state of Pennsylvania's jurisdiction. But, you know, it's far enough away from Philly that the nonsense of this case possibly could be, you know, kind of quailed at that point. You could get away from the corruption that is going on here in this case in Philly, and then possibly at that point in time he could actually receive his fair day in court. Now, there's some other things that are going on here too, which is the fact that why is she not been disbarred, or at least put on administrative leave pending the FBI investigation? And, you know, why is she able to not just preside, over his case, but continue to preside over other people's cases? Like, this is the most egregious form of corruption that I've seen in a very, very long time. The court calls its next witness the attorney representing Meek Mills.
So why can't this judge get removed from the case?
Well,
I know that was the effort that you were making.
And we're still making it. I mean, more than ever now, it's clear she has. Look, she hired a lawyer. Man, the judge hired a criminal lawyer because the FBI was looking into her, okay, based on this conduct. She hired a criminal lawyer to threaten us, and me in particular, that she was going to sue for defamation. To which I have said, come on, bring it on.
But I just don't understand why there's nothing in place that can say, okay, this judge has her own biases, there's questions about this. I feel like that's what should happen, and
right.
Bring in...
I mean, imagine a judge having a lawyer against the defendant and his legal team and threatening lawsuits against them, and she's still the judge overseeing the case. I mean, it's so ridiculous. You don't have to be a lawyer or go to law school to understand, like you guys are picking up on. It's a pure conflict. It's exactly what can't happen.
But why is it happening? Is there nobody over her that
you know
can
what?
I don't understand how the system works. That's all I'm saying. Like,
good.
Why
So that makes three of us, right? Mm-hmm. We're all in the same boat because none of us understand it. I mean, you're in a situation where yes, there's appellate courts, there's the Superior Court, there's the Supreme Court, and we're moving to all of them. We're seeking relief from everyone and anyone. So, you know, it's clear she doesn't belong in this case. I mean, imagine this. She now knows the FBI had investigated her based on a complaint that was made by Meek's legal team. Mm-hmm. And the FBI took steps to investigate her. How could she sit in judgment of that guy who caused the FBI to look into her? How could she sit in judgment of someone who she hired a lawyer to threaten? How could she sit in judgment fairly and impartially? It's a joke that she's still literally sitting on this case, but she is. But again, let's go back to yesterday and see what happened. You now have both parties agreeing that Meek's conviction should be tossed,
Right.
okay, because of constitutional violation. This evidence was known back in 2005. The former district attorney who prosecuted the case, Seth Williams, who's now in federal prison for corruption, and it was never turned over. Meek's case was in 2008. Now, normally in like the world I live in courts,
Right.
a hearing is required when two sides, the prosecutor and defense in this case, disagree, and the court is needed to settle the dispute. That's why you have a hearing.
Correct.
No disagreement here.
Here, there's no disagreement,
Right.
and therefore there's no need for a hearing. But so instead of yesterday saying, okay, I grant, if you agree, prosecutor, I grant your motion, case is set aside, new trial, if they were going to bring a new trial, he's released on bail. What she said yesterday was, yeah, well, we're going to have a hearing in 2 months. Thank
But
you.
she's basically a dictator. Basically said, I don't give a fuck what y'all saying. This is my court. This is what I want to do. That
Correct.
is crazy.
Right. And wait, and then how about this? So we then say, okay, you want to put a hearing for 60 days from now, even though there's no need for a hearing? Do what you want to do, but hear us on bail. Obviously, there's a major change in circumstances. The district attorney is now saying we are going to move and join in the motion to have this case overturned. Okay, let him out on bail now.
And he's clearly
let him out on
not
bail
fleeing
because
anywhere,
she said at one point he was a flight risk. I mean,
Come on now.
where is Meek
Where is he
Mill
gonna
gonna go? Exactly. And what happens is we say, all right, let him out on bail at least. The inevitable is happening. I mean, the case is going to be overturned, right? Without question.
Right.
You have a corrupt cop. If I were this judge or any judge, I would be furious that a law enforcement officer came into my courtroom, took an oath to tell the truth,
Absolutely.
and lied. Not only against Meek, but against 80 other people that are known
Right.
who are going to have their hearings on Friday.
And like,
So-
how dare you take these people's lives from them and take them from their families for all this
Lying.
time?
Lying. I mean, lying and making up facts. If I were the
And so you have here his lawyer, the DA, and even his probation officer talking about technical violations, not actual crimes. And the probation officer themselves said that he shouldn't do any more jail time based on this violation. Now, the probation officer didn't even want to have a hearing, but yet the judge still went ahead and said, well, we're going to have this hearing. And then you're going to hear here in a second from his attorney, witness number 3 of ours, that this judge was on sick leave when she showed up at a homeless shelter where he was doing his community service, and she supervised it herself. Now, when has a judge in person ever done this to anyone in the history of jurisprudence? I'll give you the answer. Never. It's never happened. This judge has set the judicial system back about 87 years. Yes, 87 years to the Scottsboro 9 trial in 1931 in Alabama. If you remember this trial, it was where 9 black men were accused of raping a white woman, and by the end of it, it came out that she had just flat out lied. Well, I tell you that in this case, the black man is the one being raped by the judicial system. And quite frankly, it's not right. It's wrong. And like Malcolm said, I don't care who is telling the truth. The truth is the truth. And the old saying goes, as I've heard old folks say it when I was growing up, is if you tell the truth shall set you free. Well, let's hope in this case that eventually the truth sets Brother Meek free soon.
And what this really brings to light is there's so many people out there that won't have the opportunity to have a high-powered lawyer like yourself, to have the attention, to have the money, the finances, and they get caught up in the system,
Correct.
and no one knows about it.
And that's something I'm telling you. That's something that Meek keeps talking about, and he said it time and again about making sure this shines a light on the voiceless. Because there are a lot of people who get swallowed up by the system and can't fight back like this.
Now, another thing I want to talk to you about is the case itself. Things like this are exactly what Bernie Sanders and CNN's Van Jones, Killer Mike, and many, many others are talking about when they're calling for criminal justice reform. Another example of how the system is fucked up and is in desperate need of reform is the idea of these mandatory minimum laws. Now, I've personally spoken to judges here in Michigan who hate this law because they say it ties their hands. It doesn't allow them to consider evidence on individual cases, and it also is very biased in terms of it doesn't allow them to consider extenuating circumstances. So the idea of mandatory minimums was supposed to speed up sentencing process, clean up dockets, and just make the court system faster. But because of the laws were produced by the legislature and not the judicial system itself, then basically it just binds judges by the law to follow them, whether they want to or not. So imagine this for a minute. An average citizen who isn't famous or doesn't have the money that Meek has, who at best has a public defender fresh out of law school at best, or no lawyer at all at worst, is facing the same type of corruption. And even if they had a fair and impartial judge, which obviously Judge Brinkley clearly is not in this case, but if this average citizen did have a judge that was fair and impartial, that judge still couldn't intercede on the person's behalf because they are bound by the mandatory sentencing laws to follow what the sentencing guidelines are to a T. So, the average citizen gets no media attention, can't afford good lawyers, can't afford the legal costs to appeal to a higher court, and that person is just screwed in doing whatever time is handed down to them, regardless if they are actually guilty or innocent, and regardless of what extenuating circumstances, may exist. Now, it is because of this very fact, like Meek Mill said, that everyone needs to do everything that they possibly can to avoid the system. And to avoid the court system, to get out and vote and elect like-minded people who support the reforms that are needed. To the people who are in office now that support the status quo, that think what this corrupt judge has done in Meek's case is okay, then the next election cycle, let's get out there and vote and kick their asses right out of office. And quite frankly, the final ruling in this case should be one of my favorite rulings of all time. Is case dismissed. Good riddance.
The official adventures of